he had in the back of his trunk. He didn't even notice that the trunk lid was still up, and he just drove off. And they said, okay, great. I said, I wonder if I should hold on to it. He said, yeah, well, just hold on to it till the morning. I'm kind of curious to see how this goes. I get a phone call the next morning. It might have been from Bracken, real early, like 7:30. Sid is on the radio pleading with people, anybody near the Portland Avenue area, downtown Minneapolis, who happen to see a tape recorder on the street, please let me know. That's my tape recorder. So I really wanted to hold him hostage for a while longer. I didn't. And we at that point turned it in, and I think he thanked me kinda for about a second, and then he offered up a couple of expletives after that. It was just so classic Sid, the obliviousness all the way through this, including just driving off with it. I don't know how long. He may have driven all the way home to Golden Valley with the trunk lid up, for all I know. It's crazy.
Well, that figures, yeah. It's amazing what that went through. We had so many stories about it. We hid it in the freezer one time after a game in the North Stars. He put it down, and then he started really going nuts because he couldn't find a tape recorder and swearing at everybody. And Doc Rose, pulled it out of the freezer. And Tommy Reed started yelling at him, was, hot news, we have to cool it off. That tape recorder was his signature. That's for sure. I mean, no matter where he went, it went.
He's it sounds trite to say it, Louis, but we'll never see anybody like him, will we?
No. He just, there's so many stories. I mean, you could sit down and just eat with him and you'd have a story,
Yes. And half of his food on your shirt.
God,
yeah.
He would. Oh my God. He used to, the guy was amazing. He was at my house for dinner one time, and we make my brother and sister and family in the Sioux have continued a tradition on it my grandfather and father had, and we make our own salami. And it is the best. You think Genoa is good, but this is the best salami in the world.
Well, that sounds good just thinking about it.
And we get about 26 or 28, and he's over at my house, so I decided to give him some salami. I don't know if you can eat this now. I don't know if this is against the Jewish rules or not, what's in there. And I try to tell him what's in. Oh, no, I can eat it. And he has it, and he says, oh, my God. He says, you got to get more of this. I said, I can't. We only get 26, 28. He says, I'll put you in business. I'll back you. Whatever you need, get it. We can sell this. We can do very well with this. God, he was amazing. And I think of seeing his life, go like for 61 years. And I think that 2 years ago, like this year at his birthday, that day we were supposed to have the big dinner.
That's right.
Bob Hagan and the Vikings put it on. Bob Hagan and I was put it on. And it was 2 years ago, so it was the year before. And he and I and Bud were sitting there after everybody'd gone. And I said, how you doing? And he said, not good. I don't know why I'm living. He says, what do you mean why you're living? You're incredible. He said, you're still working. Next year they'll put you in Sports Illustrated on the cover. 100 years old, still working. Now, he says, I can't get around the way I can. I can't hear good. I can't work the way I want. He says, I have no purpose. I said, you got purpose there because everybody every day just lives on your every word. I mean, he was so competitive. For him not to be able to do what he wanted to do, and had done for so long at such a high level, just made him despondent, And that was the first time I really saw him really down like that.
That's interesting. I'd not heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah, it just because his competitiveness. I'll tell you, it wasn't that his health was gone or going, and wasn't anything but the fact that he didn't feel he was competing at the level that he always had.
That's what drove him. That's what kept him alive.
He was shortchanging people, and that's what kept him alive. I mean, I could, Chad will tell you, I can tell you, I mean, how many times I talked to him, he talked to him, David talked to him when he was doing the 640, 740, and 840 show.
Right.
And when Maxie and he would go and have pie after, and I'd say, said, you got to quit doing that. Why don't you just have one show like from 8:40 to 9 o'clock. So you get some rest, and because he'd get up so early, and he'd be up late. I said, why don't you just do one? No, then they'll get rid of me. I said, nobody's going to get rid of you. I said, well, no, I got to be in the radio. I got to be in the radio. I said, well, you should maybe just write once a week. and you probably aware, and because I found out, I know the paper even asked him if he wanted to cut back. He just wouldn't. Right to the very end. The guy there has never been a more driven person in sports, in finance, in industry, anywhere than him. You can't have greater passion and greater drive than this guy had to do his job. It's impossible.
Great stuff, Louie. We appreciate the time as always. We'll be back in touch soon. Thank you.
Thanks. You take care.
Outstanding stuff from Lou Nanne. We're, again, a little bit behind schedule, but we'll get caught up. We still have Patrick Royce, bottom of the 5 o'clock hour, more with Bud Grant. And when we come back, this is going to be a hidden gem, because not everybody knows who Bob Hagan, media relations, is. We do. The average Rube might not, but Hagan spent as much time around Sid as pretty much anybody, and I bet you he's got a good nugget or two. He will.
A fan.
You just had a background of everything that went on in the state of Minnesota, particularly on the University of Minnesota. And then as the pro teams came in, the Lakers and the North Stars and the Vikings and the Twins, he had a background of everything. So anything that came up, Sid had some insight as to what was going to happen. And he had the instinct of a reporter that he knew things that were about to happen, so he was in on the ground floor of everything, and he also had a base to which to report what he was doing. And if Sid said it, bank on it. It was true.
Part 2 of our interview with Bud Grant is now moved to 5:55, so we got time to chat with our next guest and then also get to Royce at the bottom of the hour. Time for both of these interviews to breathe. Bob Hagan, longtime media relations maven. That's what I call him. I don't know what his fancy title is. Doesn't matter to me. It's just media relations maven for your Minnesota Vikings. And, I'm glad actually Guardsy played that Bud soundbite, because part of what I would think would be fascinating for you and challenging is the number of times you found yourself in a position where you're dealing with both of these legends, Sid, age 100, Bud, age 93, and often, I'm assuming, putting them together or making sure they're okay or getting done whatever they want to get done. What's that been like for you, Bob Hagan?
Well, thanks for having me on, Dan. Being around those two, really has been amazing. I mean, I've probably had 500 lunches minimum with, those two guys together. I picked up the tab on most of those too. But something that I don't think people give enough credit. A lot of people think, Sid was, Bud's best friend because, that he was the coach, took the team to all the Super Bowls and the playoffs. But, the truth of the matter is they were best friends when Bud was 18 years old and Sid was 25. So it's really been a remarkable relationship over those years, and to spend the time around those two together has really been priceless. We had,
Chad on earlier. He was very emotional, not surprisingly, and very insightful, I thought. Like I said, you were around Sid a lot, man, over the decades. A lot. Maybe more than ever in some ways. And so what's the last 24 to 40 hours been like for you? I mean, how down are you right now?
Extremely. Yesterday I found out on the sideline in the third quarter, and, I spent the next quarter and a half in tears in the locker room. So I didn't see much of the game. You can insert your own joke here on the game, I guess.
Yeah.
But, it was very tough. I just went and saw Sid Friday night at his house, and stopped by there after work and spent an hour there hanging out with him, and certainly didn't think it would be the last time I'd see him.
I don't think, again, this is a good example. I know most of your average people that have no reason to know it about how much time, like you said, you spent around Sid. I mean, you got to know him really, really well, worked with him, I know, helped him. And so it's got to be, I mean, so you're feeling it also beyond what he was as this, newspaper guy and radio guy. He became very much a friend to you.
Yeah, he was great. He was great to my entire family. I think that's another thing that I really like hearing Chad talk about, how much he always talked about family. Always asked about my family. Always asked about how my mom was doing, who has Alzheimer's. He came to my kids' graduation parties. He came to their hockey games and tennis matches, and those are two sports he knows absolutely nothing about. So, he was very special, to all of us. And, the more you're around him, the more fun you'd have. Every time you'd have a dinner or lunch with him, you'd have 4 new stories to tell other people. Well, he was amazing.
Well, let me ask you. So you mentioned the number of lunches you had with Bud and Sid. What would you just listen? Would you moderate? Would you be in the middle of it? How would those lunches, on the average, how would they go?
Yeah, I would play off the history. Most of those lunches a lot of times involved the late Fred Zamberletti and Paul Wiggin also. And it was just, I kind of thought it was fun, to be with the old timers and to hear their stories. And Sid's recollection, till the day he died was unbelievable. His memory for things was, second to none of anybody I've ever met, even in his late years. He was really amazing when it came to that.
Do you remember how you first got to know him, whether there's anything notable about that before you have developed and accrued all this history with him?
Yeah, I think, everybody with Sid gets a nickname at some point. And in 1991, I got an internship with the Vikings in February, and he was coming over, and I was helping him get interviews, and he had no idea my name or anything like that. And somehow I ended up with my friend getting to know Norm Green with the North Stars. And my friend and I would see him before every game. Norm didn't know I worked for the Vikings at this point, and we became a good luck charm during the playoff run. And so he invited us up to the owner's suite when it got to the Stanley Cup semifinals,
wow,
conference finals. And when we got up there, Sid was in there, and he was like, "How did this kid, who's an intern, make it up to the owner's box?" So he gave me the nickname Norm Green Jr. And that was a cool nickname for about 2 years when we went to the Stanley Cup finals and we're doing well. And then it was a terrible nickname for the next 14 years. It was the worst name in town you could have.
Oh, I never heard that one. That's a classic. Norm Green Jr. Oh, my goodness.
From years 3 through 14, I was like, do not call me that. This guy took the team out of town. Nobody liked him. It's the worst name possible. And then I finally threatened. I said, no more interviews with Randy Moss or Mike Tice unless we get rid of that nickname. And it's gone away the last 16 years.
Were you around then when Denny got hired? Because he wanted Pete Carroll, obviously, with his relationship with Pete. Do you remember any of that? Because he got very cranky through that early period at first when Denny got the job and his guy. And I don't think it had anything to do with Denny. It was anything anti-Denny. It was just so much he was pro-Pete.
Yeah, he went after Roger Hedrick at the time pretty good on that one because he had been told one thing and it was another, and
right.
That was at the end of my internship before I got hired full time in 1992. So I got to see that side of Sid, but it wasn't. He was mad at him during the press conference, but immediately when the press conference was over, he went right up to Dennis Green and said, "I'll be the best friend you have in this town." So he can change very quickly.
That's also true. I've heard you tell the Prince story. Guardsy played some Prince music on the way in, but it is worth retelling once again from the Super Bowl several years ago when Prince had an impromptu meeting with Sid because Sid did not really give him much choice.
Yeah, it was the Super Bowl is down in Miami. Is about 10 years ago. Sid was about 90 years old, and he calls me on the phone. And Prince is going to be doing the halftime show, and he's going to be doing a press conference on Thursday at the convention center. And there's going to be 1,500 media there for the press conference, which turned out to be a press conference / concert. And so Sid calls me on the phone. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to come pick up my credential." And I said, "Well, you can't pick it up at this time because I'm going to be at the Prince press conference." And